specific aspects that cover the active listening and speaking skills that children need to develop before they can be taught individual letter sounds. These aspects are, I mean, this will become clearer to you as we go forward, but we have environmental sounds, instrumental sounds, body percussion, rhythm and rhyme, alliteration, voice sounds, and then finally oral blending and segmenting. And when you get to that section, that final section of oral blending and segmenting, that's when you're starting to break individual words down into their sounds. And that is the vital step, really, before children move on to learning the letters and building words themselves. So children receive instruction in these areas every day in the nursery. There are standalone phonics sessions that take place during the day, and there are also phonic activities that take place within the play areas, the continuous provision areas, in the classroom as well. So children have this opportunity to learn phonics in some way, shape or form throughout the day. Now, when we first begin, right back in September, when the children are having their first real experiences of school life, we work on distinguishing environmental sounds, being able to hear something in the environment around them and being able to say with some degree of accuracy what it is that is making that sound. So to develop children's listening skills and awareness of sounds in the environment, and additionally to develop their vocabulary around those things that are making the sound. So they may have heard a sound in their own environment, in home or in the park or somewhere. They might not have the linguistics to explain what that is. And so certainly in a multilingual setting like ours, our role as teachers is to make sure they have that vocabulary. And so we're building that vocabulary in English and also in the home language where available. So this develops children's understanding that the sounds they hear indoors may be different to the sounds that they hear outdoors. And we as teachers plan in a wide range of activities to kind of facilitate that. And some of the activities include going on listening walks, which is something that we've done around the school. We take the children around the not just the early years setting, but around the school so they can hear different things that are going on in various areas of the school. Listening moments where we sit and we take a moment to hear what's going on around us and see what we can hear. Drumming outdoors where we're trying to keep rhythms. These are all these, if you're interested in any of the individual activities, they're all on the letters and sounds document. And yeah, you'll get a chance to see a little bit more about how they work if you follow the link, which is at the end of this presentation. We move on to instrumental sounds after that. So the children have had some instruction on how things sound in the environment. And now we're lucky in the sense that we have a really well developed music department that is specific to the early years, that we're able to develop instrumental sound activities with the instruments that we have. And playing with musical instruments encourages children to experiment with the sounds that they hear. So one of the early activities that we do is playing instruments loudly and quietly. Children may be experiencing the sounds of some instruments for the very first time. I remember certainly my home environment didn't have gyros and maracas and things in it. And when I first went to school as a young boy myself, that was the first time that I'd experienced those kinds of sounds. And then teachers in their position, in our position, we encourage children to hear the differences between those sounds and give them the vocabulary to explain what those differences are, talking about volume and tempo and whether sounds are soft or loud, whether they last for a long time or whether they are short sounds. And there's a variety of activities that imbue the children with this kind of vocabulary and these abilities. And at this time, I'm just going to show you a little activity that we do, which is called matching sound makers. And for that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen and I'm going to return to, hopefully, you guys are going to be able to see me in just a moment. Can you see me now? Excellent, great stuff.
Yes,
so every now and again, I'm going to come back to you guys so that you can see me. So you guys get an opportunity to see what these activities look like. And this is an activity called Matching Sound Makers. And I'm going to do my best, you know, teacher face, teacher voice. I know you guys are grown-ups now, but this is a chance for you guys to be able to see what your children are doing with us in the daytime in their phonics sessions. So this is just a bog standard early phonics activity with musical instruments. And the first thing I will do is I will bring out a variety of instruments and I will play them, or better yet, I'll have the children play them so that they can hear what they sound like. So I have a guido, and I will just set that where children can see it, kind of, more or less. And a maraca, which you all know what a maraca sounds like, but potentially the children might not. And for the purposes of this activity, I have a chime bar. In this activity, we'll set the items out so that they could be seen. This is kind of awkward. I can't really see them here. And then hidden away from the children's view, I have the same instruments set apart. So under the table or behind my back or somewhere where the children can't see, I will ask then whether the children can collect the item that's in front of me. Which of the instruments is it that is making that sound? Yeah, I know you know. And yeah, and then the children come together and they collect those instruments. Hearing the difference between those instrument sounds is a really vital part of early phonics. Being able to distinguish, and then we as teachers can give them the vocabulary so that they can explain as well what they are hearing. Let me bring it back to the PowerPoint. I don't want to go back to the start. There we go. Excellent. Everybody can see this, right?
Yes.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Lovely. So one of the things that we move on to is body percussion. Children have at their disposal, we all do, a tool to make a variety of sounds and to experiment with sounds in a number of ways, which is their own bodies. And one of the things we try and do right from the very start is to encourage children to be able to keep a steady beat using stamps, pats, claps, any kind of thing that we can use with our body, but the steadiness of the beat and listening to the pattern of the sounds is really very important. Oh, whoops, I've gone too far. So awareness of sounds and rhythms, exposure to a variety of different music, different sounds, helps children to develop their general sound discrimination much faster. It contributes to a rich sonic environment. And there's a variety of activities that help the children to develop their body percussion. One of the things I'm unable to do it with you guys, unfortunately, in previous meetings I've had when we've been able to have people in. One of the activities we would do would be to sit in a circle, and this is an activity that we do with the children as well. Have the children sat round in a circle, and I will begin just a simple pattern of body percussion. I might pat my legs and clap my hands, and then see if the next person in the circle can keep that same rhythm, and it can stay the same all the way around the circle. Sounds very, very simple to us. It really isn't. It's one of the things that children struggle with at the very beginning, but the more exposure to rhythm and even listening to music, having that kind of richness in the sounds around them is really beneficial to letting the children build that awareness. Let's bring it back. So rhythm and rhyme is, you might be, your children might have gone home talking about this kind of thing. This is really what we're focusing on right now. And nursery is such a positive environment for this kind of activities. Children, they often come into the nursery with a repertoire of songs, rhymes and poems, and we help to build on that. So having those at home and at school is really beneficial for a child's early phonic development, because they're picking up on the rhythm of English. English has a kind of different feel to Spanish, to French, to anything else that you might hear. And children learning English as an additional language tune in to the sound of spoken English the more they hear rhymes, songs, poems, stories, all in the target language. We have a wide variety of books, and we have a fairly fluid timetable in the nursery that allows us time to sit with children and share books, read stories, and we really try and foster that enjoyment of reading, so the children understand that it's a valuable time. It's an opportunity for them to spend real quality time with their teacher, with their parents, with their carers, to sit down and have a book and talk at length about the content of the book is something that we work on with the children quite a lot. And it's a natural thing for them as well. They really pick up on this, on the enjoyment of reading in their time with us. And I know that they have a lot of that at home as well, which is fantastic. So I'm going to bring out an activity for us to have a look at called Silly Soup. This is one of my favorite phonic activities that we do. And this is an activity that lends itself to all sorts of elements of phonics. So again, you might have the children sat in a circle. For the purposes of this activity, I have a bowl. It's a colander, but it's a bowl. And I don't have a spoon. I'm going to use the tail end of a paintbrush. And this is our Silly Soup spoon for the purposes of today. And we're going to make a soup. I'm going to have a little try. It doesn't taste very good, and it needs some ingredients in it that we can provide. So we're going to put into the Silly Soup a car. It's really important with the early years children, and certainly children not from an English background, that we make sure they know the vocabulary for the word before we put it in. So we introduce the word. In this case, it's a car. We're going to put the car into the soup. And there's a little song that goes with stirring the soup. We're going to make some silly soup. We're making soup that's silly. We're going to put it in the fridge and make it nice and chilly. Have another look. It's the car. We try the soup. It's a little bit better than it was. It's still not great. Let's see if we can put something else in the soup that's going to make it taste a little bit better. I think I have something. And we talk to the children about this vocabulary. It's a star. And hopefully, over the course of the activity, the children understand that what we're putting in the soup are words that rhyme with each other. A car and a star, in this case. You could do it with a wide variety of things. And the more things you put in, the more opportunities the children have to hear the similarities in the words. You might have a bar or something else that goes in there as well. But the more things you can put in that rhyme, the more opportunities the children have to hear those rhyming sounds. That's just one of a variety of activities that we can do with relation to rhythm and rhyme. Once the children have that, and it really is, I find, quite a difficult thing for children to latch on to, is rhythm and rhyme. We move on to alliteration, which helps children to understand in a kind of fun, engaging way, helps them to be a little bit more adventurous in their linguistic play. One of the things here is where we're starting to break down our words into sounds. Before the children even really perceive of words as a unit, we're asking them to hear the first sound in the word. It's one of the things that I do with the children in the turtle class quite a lot. When at the end of the day, when we're seeing which children are on the rainbow, I might say, there's somebody on the rainbow whose name begins with and the children now realize that that has to be either Markel or Muyun, because they're the only children in my class whose names begin with but they're hearing the initial sound, and they're no longer hearing the name as an entire block of language. They're hearing the first sound, and they're differentiating between the names based on their first sounds. So it's a precursor to oral blending and segmenting, which we move on to a little bit later on. Understanding and exploring how different sounds are articulated really helps children to understand the fundamental differences between sounds in spoken words. And it's another area where you can use the silly soup activity, but instead of putting in words that rhyme, you could put in words that begin with the same sounds. Mirror play is really good, where children can have a look in a mirror to see the shape of their mouth as they're making the sounds. But the activity I wanted to show you guys today is really very simple. It's called a sound bag. And let me just bring you back to me. It's called a sound bag. So it's a very, very simple activity that you guys can do at home or wherever. And it just, I have a bog standard plastic bag, and I fill this bag with items that all begin with the same sound. Now, I'll get to what I mean in a minute, but I'll pull the children up one by one and ask them to have a feel around in the bag. What's in there? It's a sponge. And you really emphasize that first sound, in this case, a sponge. Fantastic. What else do we have? Very good. Some stickers, some fancy ones from the UK with Peppa Pig, some stickers. So then you go back to the items that you had before, just emphasizing that first sound. You have the sponge and the stickers. We've got a shape. We've got a cylinder. Now, cylinder doesn't begin with the S as we know it, but it's the same sound. Even though it's written with a C, it makes the S sound. As I was putting this bag together, I was thinking I almost picked up a shark. Now, a shark begins with an S, but it doesn't begin with the S sound as we know it. It doesn't begin with S. It begins with sh. So for the purposes of this activity, a cylinder works, even though it's not the same letter, but a shark doesn't work. So it's the sound we're focusing on, not the letter itself. And I've also got a seal. So we bring them all back together at the end. The children come and put them back. There's the seal and the cylinder and the sponge and the stickers, and everything goes back. It's hearing that sound. Many of the children, some of the children will have some exposure to letters, and some of the children in my class have seen letters written down, but the majority of the children will not have. And it's easier for us in a lot of cases if they haven't. So in that case, we're focusing on the sound rather than the letter shape. They will come to learn the letter shape, of course, in time. All the way through nursery, all the way through their early education into reception, etc. We work with the children on their voice sounds, letting them know and helping them to understand that playing with sounds that our voices can make is fun. It's a fun way to experiment with sound. It doesn't have to be sounds that exist in the language, or it can be words or phrases that we make up, rhymes that we make up. Making sounds with our voice, but also making sounds with our cheeks and our lips and our teeth, letting them know that they have this tool at their disposal that can make various different sounds. And it really is beneficial to, particularly to children who are EAL, because EAL children have certain sounds that they will come across in English that don't exist in their native language, as in the th sound in French, which I don't believe exists. The v sound in Spanish, which is pronounced as an English B. They're going to come across these sounds over the course of their education here at the BSB that they won't have heard previously if they're from a non-English speaking background. So it's a good way to discover those new sounds. Talking about the different parts of our mouths, as I said earlier on, that we can use to make various voice sounds, gives the children the vocabulary for later on in their education. The vocabulary about the sounds, but also the vocabulary about their bodies and their mouths, the language vocabulary around the human body, which is something that we've been working on as well as part of the work this year. And again, mirror play is a really good way for the children to be able to look at their own mouths as they make these sounds, understanding that you can hum by keeping your lips together, for example, or you can make a clacking sound with the tongue by clicking it off the roof of your mouth in that kind of way. A lot of the children will make this kind of sound kind of naturally as they experiment with what their mouths and what their bodies can do. One of the things that we do every now and again when we're feeling mischievous is we do the trumpets activity, which is down here, making trumpets. And making trumpets is a really super simple activity that you guys can do at home. Just any old piece of A4 paper. I've just made one here. It doesn't have to be anything special at all. Curl it around the tail end so you almost make a big cone, and children just are encouraged to make whatever sound that they feel like with their trumpet. I know it's potentially noisy, but you can imagine here with 16 of them in the turtles and more in the penguins that it does get a little bit noisy, but we really want the children to understand that they can play around with those voice sounds. So it takes some doing, but we eventually get to oral blending and segmentation. And this is arguably the most important element of what we teach in early phonics, because oral blending and segmenting helps children to understand that words are a collection of sounds. Now, we've already talked to children about how the first sound is separate. When we did alliteration, we focused on how that first sound is separated out. And now it's time to break those sounds down even further into smaller sections. So hearing initial sounds is a precursor to hearing all the sounds in a word. The examples that are given on the screen are hop or bouncy ball. And this is an area where many parents come to me for advice, or they come to talk to us, because if you're not from an English-speaking background, sometimes the pronunciation of the sounds is something that you might find tricky, which is totally understandable. Pronunciation of the sounds is important to helping a child put a word together. For example, the k sound, which is written on the screen. When I was in school, I remember it being taught to me as k. But that extra at the end is superfluous. It's not part of what we call the pure sound. It's actually k. So when the children are learning that with us here in the BSB, we try and focus on that exactly, the pure sound, just the sound the letter makes on its own. In this case, k. In the past, I've heard the F sound being pronounced as f, which is incorrect. It's f. Same as the M sound being pronounced as m is incorrect also. It's mm. So you can always come and talk to me if you have question marks about pronunciation. Also, at the end of this presentation, there is a link to a practitioner online called Mr. Thorne, who is somebody that I really admire, and his work on phonics is really very good. And he has a series of videos to help parents with letter pronunciation as well. One of the things that is really very useful for oral blending and segmenting of sounds is if you have a puppet or something like, well, I'm just going to show you rather than try and explain it. So in this case, he's a little dolphin or a shark. We also have a frog or various other things. But the important thing, the thing that makes a toy like this so valuable, is that the mouth kind of opens individually. And so when the toy is talking about whatever it's talking about, you as the teacher or you as the parent, practitioner at home, can open the mouth each time a different sound comes out, which clarifies to the child as they're looking at it, that's the number of sounds in the word, and all those sounds are different. So in this case, he might say, if there's an activity where we talk about what we've eaten or what we like to eat, and I might say to him, what is it that you like to eat when you're swimming around? And he might say something like, ch, e, z, ch, ease, cheese, cheese, G's. So to us, that's 6 letters in that word, but when a child is hearing it aloud, it's actually only 3 sounds. Ch, e, z. So the purity of those sounds is really very important, and something like this is really very handy for that kind of activity. So let me bring you back one more time. Of course, when children are fully confident in that, they start to speak in this kind of staccato, almost robotic kind of way. We do it with their names, certainly with somebody like Elizabeth in my class. That's quite difficult because it's a lot of sounds in that name to break down. If I were to use Emma, for example, as an example, that's much easier. We'd say Emma. And then once children are confident breaking those words down, breaking small words down into their sounds, that's when we know, okay, we're ready to move on to written, visible sounds in the way that we understand them as adults. And that's when the next step of the phonic process begins and children begin to learn their letters. And from that point on, it's incredibly rewarding to see children who came to you in September as part of P3, as part of nursery, unable to read, or really with no basis for understanding the building blocks of language, when they are ending the time with us and going into reception, they're beginning to show the behaviors that lead to reading and writing, and it's mind-blowing. As a teacher, I'm always blown away by it. So I've just got a few links on the page. This is being recorded, so you can have reference and access to this whenever. But the letters and sounds documentation, that's the document from which all those activities are from, is available on the link, the long link in the top left-hand side. The YouTube link to Mr. Thorne for accurate pronunciations is in the bottom left corner. I would really recommend having a look at him. He is so much fun. He's absolutely fantastic, and the letter pronunciations are perfect, absolutely excellent. And the children love him as well. He has a puppet. His is a giraffe, and that can be used later on because the giraffe learns individual letters, and that's something that ties into further phonics. But for letter pronunciations, which is something that a lot of parents have asked about, he's the person I always recommend. There's some phonic development games over on the Letters and Sounds website. There are phase 1 games, which is the area that we're working in now, which talk about differentiating sounds and hearing a variety of different sounds, being able to tell them apart. But there's also games for phase 2, which is where children learn individual letters, that are applicable to when children move into reception into P4. And I'm always around to talk to about this kind of thing as well. We're lucky in the sense in the nursery that we do have some physical contact with the parents. In other areas of the school, that's not possible because of COVID right now. But when you guys come and pick children up at the end of the day, I'm in the classroom. I'm always around. If you want to talk through anything phonics or phonetic related, or anything really, you can find me in the classroom always. So if there's any doubts, by all means raise them now. If you've got questions about it now, I'm here to answer some questions. But if there aren't, and that you think about them later on, then you can always ask me later on in the Turtle class as well. That's everything I have for now, guys. If there's anything else that you'd like to know, or you've got questions that you'd like to ask, then please do. Yes. Elizabeth's mom.
Hi. Yeah, hi. I'm actually on this meeting through from my phone, so I can't see the links or anything. So if you can share those links somehow else, I don't know.
Great stuff.
Through the tapestry or by email.
I think Emma is putting the links in the chat right now. Are you able to access the chat?
No.
Right, okay, not to worry. I can put those on a tapestry for the whole of the nursery cohort. The meeting's also been recorded, so the recording of the meeting will be on Teams as well.
I can log in on Teams on my computer because
Okay.
I have only Macs there.
Not to worry. Well, I'll post the entire PowerPoint onto the tapestry, but I'll also paste the links so that they're easy to click.
Thank you.
No worries. All right, guys. If there's nothing else, so thank you very much for coming. It's always a pleasure for me to be able to talk through a little bit of the theory behind all this. If there's anything that comes to mind, anything you'd like to talk about later down the line, I'm just here in the Turtle class. So thank you very much, and yeah, I will see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Steve.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Steve. Well done, love. Well done.
Thanks, Emma.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.